Welcome back to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast series. Welcome back to the audio podcast or the video series. Before we get started today, I just want to shout out to my sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Job Search QLD, the #1 platform for online practice job interviews with real industry professionals. If you suffer from nerves or struggle to effectively communicate your value, articulate your skills, experience, or achievements, then Job Search QLD is here to assist. This team is passionate about helping you to step onto the next step of the ladder of your career, empowering future leaders to excel during the interview process so you can land the ideal job. And I think it is applicable in the time we are today to get the most skills you can about giving yourself that opportunity to find the next job. If this sounds like something that's important to you, you can find them on jobsearchqld.com. That is jobsearchqld.com. But today I'm joined by Steff Green, someone that I met through a mastermind program through COVID a few months ago. And we reached out and said, hey, I'd be interested in coming on the show and having further discussions. And for me to find out that Steff is a USA Today best-selling author of supernatural romance books, something I would not know a lot about. Vampires and witches, again, a niche and space that I'm not in, but I'm totally intrigued about the story, being an author, the success behind it, and being able to become a full-time author as a career. And something else that totally caught me off guard after I'd heard Steff speak and everything that she'd gone through. Steff is legally blind. And this to me just said, hey, I want her on the show. I'd love to have discussions about the things she's learned and the insight she's going to provide us today. But Steff, welcome to the show.
Hey, Lawrence, thanks so much for having me.
Sorry to interrupt the current show, but just to let you know, if you're enjoying what you see, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. So next time another episode comes out, you'll be able to see it first. Back to the show. Like I said, it was so intriguing being on the mastermind a couple of months ago. And, we're out there trying to improve ourselves and our businesses and so forth. And, me finding out that you're an author, a successful author, and then finding out this cool supernatural niche. A lot of things that people still don't realize is still going on is the actual industry of writing a book, thinking about a book, putting a book together that's not a self-help book. Because at the moment, everyone's sort of a self-help book or how to be empowered, how to be inspired, but there's actually still novels out there that people consume all the time. And to start off in that career, I would like to find out from you is what is one of the most important or the biggest things that writers or potential writers can do to set them up for success in the beginning?
Well, I guess the most important thing that you've got to do right from the beginning is that you have to be able to finish a book, whether it is a nonfiction book or a fiction book. You have to be able to actually type the end and have the thing finished. And, that's hard for a lot of people. Like a lot of us, and I certainly did this when I started writing, I would spend like years and years, like just redoing the first 3 chapters. I'm like, I have to make these first 3 chapters absolutely perfect. And the thing is that when you get to the end of a book, what you often find is that you actually have to go back and delete those first three chapters because, you didn't start the story in the right place or everything's changed. And so you might spend like 5 years editing those chapters that you just completely delete. And so that's the biggest thing, is that you have to be able to push through and you have to be able to finish stuff. And that's kind of what I do with the other side of my business, is that, as well as writing my sexy vampire novels, I also help other writers to learn how to finish a book. And I kind of have a system for working on the plot and designing the characters and figuring it all out, so that when you sit down, you always know, this is what I'm going to be writing now, and this is how I'm going to power through and get the words done. And once I've got the words done, I can edit it and I can make it sound really nice. But yeah, you've got to be able to finish.
That's a great insight. I think anyone can take that relatable into life. We start a new adventure, we start something new, we think of something, and we want it to be perfect from the beginning. Or, you get into it, I'm starting up a company, I'm starting up a brand, I'm starting up a podcast, for example. I speak to a lot of people about this, and they go, I want to do my first episode, and I want it to be perfect. I want the video and the audio and everything else, and so forth and so forth. And I say to them, just give it time, let it go, and do the episodes or do the part of the business, because as you go further down the path, like you said, as you get closer to the end of the book, you can totally relate that something in the beginning might not be applicable anymore. Your ending might not relate to your beginning, and you would have to change it. And overspending time on perfection when you don't understand the whole goal or the whole journey, like you said, could waste years and years of rewriting and so forth.
Exactly. And perfectionism is procrastination. So that, something I always say. So just got to get in there and you got to do it.
It's funny you mentioned procrastination. It was actually a question I'm just about to ask you, and let's talk about, how can I struggle with procrastination. My wife will tell you that a lot, but fundamentally, as an author or someone that's writing or someone that wants to produce content in that sense, how can I stop? What can I do to stop myself procrastinating about writing my book or writing the next chapter?
So one of the biggest reasons that that us writers we do this kind of procrastination thing is because we don't know, we sort of actually don't know what we're going to be writing down next.
Mm-hmm.
We sit in front of the computer and we stare at a blank page and we go, oh, well, I don't know. And so and that feels really hard and not like a lot of fun. And so you think, well, I'm not going to do any writing today because I don't know what I want to do. So I'll just, go watch the Netflix instead or whatever. And the best way to kind of get around that, there's sort of two things. And one is to force yourself into a small amount of time when you have to write. You often actually do more in 20 minutes. If you give yourself 20 minutes where you set a timer and you turn off Facebook and you just sit down and you go, I'm going to write as much as I can, 20 minutes, and you'll find you'll get quite a lot done. Whereas if you had 5 hours, but you're sitting around and you're fiddling with Facebook and you're padding the cat or whatever, then you'll often find that you won't get nearly as much done as you think you would. And so kind of cramming your writing into these little spaces where you're really focused, that's a really big thing. And that's how I write. As much as I write 4,000 words a day every single day, and I do that in 20-minute slots. And I write about 600 words every 20 minutes, and then I take a 5-minute break and then go back and do it again. And so that's one really great technique. And the other thing is to do some kind of planning. And a lot of authors, we all fall into one or two different camps, and the camps are plotters, who are people who like a really detailed outline before they start writing. They have to know what's going to happen in every single chapter to every single character. And then there are writers that we call pantsers, because they write by the seat of their pants. Mm-hmm. And they're writers who don't like to know what's going to happen next, because if you plan the book, then you don't want to write the book because you don't know, because you already know what's going to happen. So it's not any fun anymore. And that's, I kind of fall quite into that, I kind of fall into that pantser category. Mm-hmm. And so it's quite hard to think about how to plan a book when planning a book makes it not so much fun.
Yep.
And so what I do is I do this thing that I call that skeletoning. And so what I do is for a 70,000 word book is I will write a 20,000 word draft of the book in 3 days, and it is rough as guts, this draft. It's dialogue, it's bits that say insert sex scene here, it's just horrible, it's ridiculous. I would never let anyone see it. But what it is it's getting down all the ideas in my head and all those little kind of scenes and those little interactions between the characters that you've already got hanging around in your head. And I get all of those down and I get all the chapters down. And then I go back and start from the beginning and I go, okay, well, now I can fill in. Now that I know I've got the shape of the book, I can fill in all the little bits. And it's a really fun process of sort of not quite... when I'm sitting down to write, I don't have to go, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, because I know what's going to happen because it's all in the draft already, but I get to sit down and go, okay, well, I can make this sound really pretty, and
Mhm.
I can write the sex scene that that I've left out, and so those are the two techniques that I use, really.
That's great. I love how you use the example, however, if we have more time, we actually do less. It is definitely a psychology behind that. I just recently watched a video by a gentleman called Naz Daily. Spoken about him before. Became famous from doing 1 minute clips from every single day for I think he did 500 or 1,000 of them throughout the world, and he's just started doing longer form content now, not every single day. And he just did the same test in his company, and he said, in the sense of, if I give them 2 weeks to complete a project, they will take 2 weeks plus 1 day. If I give them the same 2-week project and say to them, okay, you've got 8 hours to complete it, somehow they'll complete it within 8 hours. The same amount of people that would have taken 2 weeks plus 1 day normally, because they were normally a bit late. And that whole thing, if you give everyone too much time, the focus and so forth is not there. And it's just as you said, you short, focus, get it out of the way, and that helps remove the procrastination out of the way as well. To me personally, when I do that to myself, it does work. When I go, okay, 30 minutes, here's the 5 things, get that done before you can get up or get out. And you'll notice that it'll take me half the time I thought it would take me. And I go, great. Normally that would take me the whole day to do it. But we got to get that mindset of keep that on ourselves. Okay, the 30 minutes a day or the 1 hour a day to do those tasks. Like you said, you write a set amount of words every single day.
Exactly. And it's like this quick win thing, because, a book is like 70,000 words or something like that. And that's quite a lot of words. And it feels like this big, like ridiculously difficult thing, because who could ever imagine writing 70,000 words?
Yep.
But 70,000 words is just like 2,000 words a day for a couple of months. Like, it's not actually that bad once you break it down. And if you get those quick wins in really quickly, and you're like, yeah, I've done 20 minutes and I've already got 500 words for the day, it just all goes so much faster, and it's fun. And I always think things should be fun.
Totally agree with that. So as we've gotten through, we've finished the book. We haven't procrastinated, or we've focused a bit more. So we've got a book in some form that that we're going to want to put out or distribute out in there. Is what are the options for a writer to get their books, or they get their books or the story behind the books to be heard by the end customer?
So this is where things get really interesting. So basically you've got 2 options, and the first option is what we call traditional publishing. And this is where you take your finished manuscript and you send off a kind of a pitch about this manuscript, and you send it off to publishers. And you would do that to publishers all over the world, and possibly to literary agents who would then get you in front of bigger publishers. And they have to like your pitch. So someone has to see your pitch in the giant pile of pitches they get every single day, and they would have to go, yeah, it sounds interesting. And then they would request, 50 pages of the manuscript, and you'd send those, and then a few months later, if they like those 50 pages, they may request the rest of it. And then they might give you a publishing deal. And that publishing deal might have an advance of, maybe $20,000 or something like that. And then they would do a print run of maybe 10,000 books, and they would send those books out to the bookshops and off to Amazon and things like that. And then you would launch the book probably 2 years later, and you would get around 10% royalties from every single book, and you wouldn't get paid a cent of those royalties until your 10% of the royalties. So it's about like $1 a book kind of thing. Until those royalties paid back the advance that the publisher gave you. And very often books don't sell out that advance. So that initial 20 grand that you got for that book might be the only money you ever see from it. And so that's traditional publishing, and it's really awesome. It's got lots of benefits. The publisher takes care of everything. They take care of the cover, they do the editing, they talk to the bookshops, they do all of that jazz for you. So that's really awesome. And then the other option is what I do, and this is self-publishing. And so this is where you finish your book, and then you sign up for Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing and the other publishing platforms like Apple and Kobo, and you get your book out there, usually in the form of an ebook. And you can do print-on-demand paperbacks as well, which is where someone buys the paperback from, say, Amazon, and then as soon as they buy it, Amazon will print a copy of the paperback, just the one, and send it out to that customer. And so you don't have to buy like 5,000 books and like store them in your attic. And the benefits of self-publishing are that you are in complete control over everything. So you are the one who has to go out and find a cover designer, but you get to choose what your cover is. You get to be in control over the editing of your book. You get to be in control of when your book is published. So like usually a traditional publisher, they will only publish one book from you a year. Whereas with self-publishing, you publish as many books as you like. So I publish about 10 books a year. And there's so you get control, you get much better information. Traditional publisher, they will send you a royalty form every 6 months. You won't know from day to day how many books you've sold. You'll only sort of get an idea every 6 months or so. Self-publishing, they will give you, self-publishing. You can log into Amazon at any time and you get a real-time dashboard that tells you exactly how many books you've sold today. And so it means if you run an ad, you can see immediately how well the ad's doing. So, and the other big thing about self-publishing is that you get to keep around 70% of the royalties. And so because of that, you earn a lot more money per book than you do traditionally publishing, even if your books are priced lower. And it means effectively that a book that would have been a complete failure if it was traditionally published will be successful as a self-published book, because you don't have to sell 50,000 copies to make it a success. You might only have to sell 5,000 copies. So that's the options.
I'm guessing that, you're talking about to be a success. I'm guessing it all depends on an author's opinion of what his success is. I'm guessing for yourself, that is, Steff, that you've written so many books, you've got a criteria that you'd like to meet each time you sell a book. And a first-time author might go, hey, I would love to sell just 500 books. I would love to sell 1,000 books, right? And then each time they do it, they go more and more. And I'm guessing there's no author, unless you're one of the best, that each book that you release is always better than the last from the book sales. I guess it's not, just doesn't naturally work like that, because some of them work and some of them don't, I guess.
Yes, and it's a funny thing that I am still learning a lot about. My career up until last year has been sort of a reverse ski jump. Like it's been a pretty steady upward trend. Every book's done a little bit better than the last book. And then last year, my 34th book hit the big time, like the real big time. I was number 20 in the entire Amazon store.
Wow.
And that was pretty incredible.
That's amazing.
And then yeah, it was amazing. And so that was the first book in a series, and I published the second, third, and fourth book in that series, like a couple of months apart, and it was amazing. And then I sort of thought, well, things are just going to keep going really well. And then what happened was that series finished, and all the readers that read that series moved on to other things, and I released a new series, and I thought they'd all kind of come over and read my new series, and they didn't. And, and I was like, where have you all gone? Don't you love me anymore?
You got people's attention. While you have them, they'll give you everything, and then you give them that short break, and then they get to another attention. They're like, I'm over here now. Sorry, I'm not coming back. And it is a challenge of how to try and keep that going and longer. And, this leads me into my next question. I was going to go to thinking about how do readers choose to read books that are produced, and as an author, why is it important as well to understand this relationship that the readers have with the books that they buy physically or, online?
So this is really interesting, because it kind of relates a lot to why I had this big hit, and then why I couldn't keep the readers after the big hit. And the thing about readers, they're really fascinating.
Mhm.
Is that readers are series loyal first. So if you're a reader and you start reading a series of books and you love it, you're going to read all the books in that series. You know, it's why Harry Potter was so popular.
Yep.
And then after readers are series loyal, they're genre loyal. So authors like me, we often read quite widely. Like, you know, I read all sorts of different crazy things. But readers, people who are like really, really readers, they tend to like one genre really exclusively. So, you know, if you are a mystery reader, you will read all of the mysteries, anything with a mystery in it, anything with a murder, you're gonna be on it. And my readers are romance readers, and they are super voracious, and they read something like, a lot of them will read something like 1 or 2 books every single day. But they will basically exclusively only read romance books, but
Mhm.
1 or 2 a day, which is incredible. So, and
You
when
got to
you read
produce more. You got to produce more.
exactly, so it's really good to always be, you know, always be writing, always be producing new books, so you can stay in their heads.
Mhm.
And what it also means is that readers that read that much, they, you know, often they forget about you as an
Yep.
author. That comes to the third thing, which is right after they are series loyal and they are genre loyal, way sort of down the list, they're author loyal.
Mhm.
So it's kind of why, like, for example, readers might say, oh, J.K. Rowling is my favorite author of all time. And they will have read the Harry Potter books probably a million times, but they may have never read any of the other books that J.K. Rowling ever wrote, but they'd
Yeah.
still say she was their favorite author. And that's because, yeah, readers aren't as author loyal as they like to think they are. And so that's a really interesting thing about readers. And, you know, if you're an author, it's really important to think about, who are my readers? You know, what genre am I writing? And it's really important to know that, because your genre is how you market your books. It's where you fit on the bookshelf or the virtual bookshelf. You know, who's the demographic of your audience? And it might be not who you think it is. Like, for example, one of the biggest fiction genres in the world are thrillers and mysteries. And what most people don't realize is that majority of them are read by women.
Mhm.
And it feels like a very masculine genre, and a lot of the big authors are men, but actually it's majority read by women. And so it's really interesting that you've got to kind of know these things. Um, Men tend to read more non-fiction, women tend to read more fiction, but then there are fiction genres which are, you know, male-centric. So, you know, there's a gender thing. Um, there is, you know, certain readers like to read in certain different ways. You know, a lot of people who read non-fiction really like it in a paperback form,
Yeah.
or, you know, or a hardback form, so they can like make notes in the book and, you know, bring it out later. But you know, the whale readers, the ones that I have that read these 1 or 2 books a day, they just want the cheapest way they can possibly get their hands on books.
Yep.
Because they read so many, and so they love Kindle Unlimited, which is Amazon's Spotify for books program. They like pay $10 a month and they get all the books they could possibly want. And so thinking about these things is super important, because that's how, as an author, that's how you're going to reach your readers.
You know, I love that. You're explaining the 3 key things that an author's got to think about when producing a book. Talking about the series, the genre, and then fundamentally the author itself in that sense. And again, it's like you said, we got to think, no matter what we're doing, whether anyone that's listening or watching at the moment, we're running a business, brand, and so forth. It's something big I always talk about. You got to understand your customer. You got to understand what they want from you, you know, and what they're there specifically for. If they found you by mistake, hopefully you can keep them. But most of your customers are there for a reason. And if you pivot from what they're expecting, especially if you've had a long success like yourself, Steff, if you went from, you know, your romance novels and you started doing thrillers, you know, you're gonna have like one leftover customer that found you by mistake, and everyone else doesn't go out the window. And we see that all the time in businesses. We see that in brands. We see that in people starting up a new adventure, and they've had such a big following behind them, what they're doing, and they go so left to right field, and they go, why did no one support me? Why did no one support my new brand that I stood up? I've been producing shoes my whole life and everything else, and now I'm going to start up and run corporate companies. And everyone's like, well, first, it's not relatable. It's how do I come across and things like that. And I'm sure you've seen it as well with authors trying to just go, okay, my 10 thriller books didn't work, so now I'm going to go to comedy, for example.
It's so common. It's one of the biggest mistakes that authors, especially authors who are sort of newer to self-publishing, it's one of the biggest mistakes that you make. And it comes from this, we're all artists, we're all super creative. And we all, often we all read quite widely. So we kind of have this like really broad kind of creative over, I guess you could say, to draw from. And we go, oh, I've written the romance, but now I want to write a mystery. And that's not, and then you throw them all up under one pen name, and you just think, well, I've published like 10 books this year, so why aren't I successful? And it's because you published 10 books in 10 different genres. And this thing I often talk about when you think about branding. Brand, what is the brand that you have as an author? And the most important thing about that, it's actually not about you at all. It's about the reader. It's about you are making a promise to the reader who has come to you because they want a really specific experience from their books. If they're a mystery reader, they really want a puzzle to solve and some dead bodies. And, if you then write a mystery, but you don't reveal the puzzle at the end, then you've completely broken the promise that you made to them. And when you break a promise to someone, they don't trust you anymore. And so that's the thing. If they don't trust you, they're not going to come back. And so it's exactly that. I would never, ever, ever write a non-romance book under my romance pen name because it breaks the promise.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And getting into one more thing, I wanted to find out, and we've spoken about the moment, like you said, you produced, I think you said 10 books over a year or so, Phil, and people are either producing one book, 10 books, a book a month or so much more. Is how can a person going down this path go from writing and publishing a book to becoming a full-time author as a career? Taking it sort of how I'm enjoying doing it as a hobby job or hobby brand and actually becoming a full-time author as a career.
It is. So there's a thing I always say to people who are thinking about this, and the first thing you've got to think about is that there are a million easier ways to earn a living than being a writer. And so, if you are truly just in this for the money, then this is not the career for you. Not because you can't earn decent money, because you can, but because if you are purely looking at this and thinking, well, where is the money? Where am I going to get the most money from? Then that's, there's much easier. You might as well be an investment banker. Like there's much easier ways to earn money. But so the first thing is that you've got to not be thinking about what I should write in terms of the money, but what I should write in terms of what really creatively fulfills me. And then, once you've, what do I enjoy? Because you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah.
What do I really enjoy writing? What am I really passionate about writing? And then finding the sweet spot between what I love writing and what readers want to read. So you've got to find that sweet spot. And then you've got to kind of realize that the thing about being an author is that it's not about one book that you write. It is a whole career, a whole career's worth of books. And so you've always got to be thinking, I'm not just writing one book, I'm writing a whole bunch of books. And it's much easier to succeed as an author, especially a self-published author, if you write books in a series, because it's kind of like a marketing funnel. You hook people with book 1, and then a certain amount of people will go to book 2, and a certain amount of people will go to book 3, and a certain amount of people will go right up to book 10. And we've got very specific numbers, and we know exactly what we can expect from that read through on a series. And so you can give book 1 in a series away for free, a whole book for free, that took you a long time to write, and you can still make a lot of money if you can hook people on that series. And so thinking about writing a series is going to make your life so much easier. And and just thinking about the long term. and you just, things just build, and you can just build and build this audience until eventually it just gets to a point where it covers your expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And you just never know when a book is going to completely take off. Like I said, I had a book that suddenly became a hit, and it was my 34th book. So I wrote 33 books that weren't really hits, but what happens is that every month a few people buy every single book that I've
Mm-hmm.
ever written, and that adds up and adds up and adds up. And then when you do have a hit, suddenly a whole lot more people
Yeah.
are buying all of those previous books. And now I've got like over 40 books.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a very nice life. And like I said before, I am, if I was traditionally published, a lot of my books would be failures because they don't sell. They don't sell tens of thousands. Well, yeah, I've had a couple that sell tens of thousands, but they don't sell hundreds of thousands of copies.
Yeah.
But because I keep so many of my royalties and I'm in control of what I do, we get to have a really amazing, incredible career doing something really creatively fulfilling. It's so much fun. It's a great story to tell at parties. People ask you what you do, and you say, well, I write sexy vampire books. Like, it's great.
No, Steph, I love that. I love that whole, if you're getting into it for the money, you're getting in for the wrong reason. So I say, funny enough, I say that a lot of people are into podcasting. I mean, I mentor and I coach people to get into podcasting or producing content as we're doing at the moment. I mean, they see the likes of Joe Rogan. They just signed up a $200 million contract with Spotify. They go, oh yeah, I'm going to make money. I'm like, we don't do this for the money. We don't do this to get rich. We do this because we enjoy it and passionate and, and so forth. And like you said, if you're getting into becoming a writer because you think you're going to make the millions off the bat, then you're chasing the wrong thing. Not saying you can't achieve it, but you're going in for the wrong reason.
Yep. And I think if you're writing, or you're producing podcasts or any kind of content and you're not passionate about it, then I feel like that really comes through in in the work that you do. And I think that's a big reason of why that's why those people don't make the big bucks.
Yeah, I totally agree. Steph, just before we end off the show today, I wanted to, as you said, you're producing. I want to know, is there something new coming up? What's the latest thing that you've got on your plate, or the new book that you could maybe talk about that's coming out to the customers?
Yes, so I have just launched. I've just launched a brand new website and a brand new online course, which is all about helping you self-publish. So whether you are a non-fiction author and you're wanting to kind of build a business around books and maybe like courses and things like that, or if you are a fiction author and you want to write your murder mysteries or your sexy vampire books. I've built this whole course, and it's like a 11-step formula. This is how I do it. This is how you can go from being a failed archaeologist, which is what I was, to a best-selling multi-six-figure author. And this is how to do it. And so my website is www.rageagainstthemanuscript.com. And there's a whole bunch of free content there if you want to learn more about writing, learn more about publishing. I've got a podcast all about self-publishing, and then you can join my my course, How to Rock Self-Publishing, and it's heaps of fun.
That's awesome. I love the Rage Against the Manuscript. Any some metal fans out there would enjoy that. Tongue-in-cheek name on that, but that's awesome, Steph. With the new website, like I said, it's amazing the quality of your books and everything you're producing out there. And to anyone that's listening or watch at the moment, if it's something you're considering, wanting to write a book, like you said, fiction or non-fiction, Steph's done it. Steph's done 40 to date. Like she said, the experience is there. You'd be silly to try to jump into the deep end by yourself without a little bit of a floaty to keep you up there. And, and Steph's going to be that very large floaty to mean that you can jump into a very deep end. By all means, go on over to the website, see what she has to offer, and, and reach out and say, hey, I need some help. And by all means, she'll help you out in that. But at the end of the day, as I always say out there, if there's something from the episode that you got away, you took from it, if something that you learned from the episode today, and you know someone else that could need the help in the time we are in the world, tell them to come on over. Tell them to come and listen, to come and watch, come and learn something new they can possibly do with their lives at the moment, as we all in the world trying to find out where we stand and where our normality is. But as I always say at the end, stay safe, stay beautiful. Until next time, thank you so much.